Hey folks, this is BusaBob at BusaBob's Garage, and today I'm changing out my fuel valve on my KLR650 fuel tank. And what I'm doing is replacing the vacuum operated valve with a manual shutoff valve. So I've already got the tank off, and basically what's involved in that is just taking off your side panels and the front fairings, and then loosening the two bolts that hold the tank in place, and then removing the fuel line and the vacuum line. So that part is already done, and I just wanted to point out a couple of things on the new valve and on the tank, which I have over here. First of all, there's still fuel in the tank, and I've got it tipped upright. There's a gasket on the filler cap, so it's not spilling any gas. The tank is almost full. And then more importantly, what I wanted to point out is the new valve has a shorter reserve tube. So as you can see, the older one has a longer tube, and then the other thing is it has the vacuum valve for the diaphragm inside that allows the fuel to flow. And this can be a problem on some bikes if the diaphragm breaks, or if your vacuum line comes off or something like that, it'll leave you stranded. So this is a manual valve right here, and the thing I wanted to point out with the shorter reserve tube is I was getting about 220 miles before I had to flip it over to reserve, and you know, I'm getting about 48 miles to the gallon, so that should extend my miles before I have to flip to reserve, but also it's gonna, you know, decrease the amount of fuel that's left when it does hit reserve. So I'll have to check that out and see how everything goes. Now, as far as replacing, sorry about the shadows, it's pretty bright out here. As far as replacing the valve, the original one came out pretty easy. It's only 2 screws on the top that hold this thing in, and as you're taking it out, you want to be careful that you don't lose the filter that's on the end of this thing. So right now I'm going to put the new valve in there, and again I'm trying to do this with one hand on the camera. The other thing you want to make sure of as well is making sure that you have the gasket on the new valve, and it should be in place when you get it, but I just want to point that out. Okay, and the other thing is there are some rubber coated washers on the screws. You want to make sure you get those back in, otherwise you're going to have some leaks. Okay, so that's really about it. The only thing I really wanted to point out was the difference in the reserve tube and just some key points about installing this valve. So that's pretty much it. The only other thing is you will have to shut off your fuel if you leave your bike sit for any extended period over a couple times, because, or over a couple hours, because the float in the carburetor will be the only thing that's shutting off. When you replace the fuel valve from the vacuum operated one, you want to make sure that you block off the vacuum hose coming from the carburetor. And the way that I did that was I put a screw in it, and I'm also gonna put this cap on the top of the screw, or on top of the hose. Okay, and then the other thing you're going to want to do is tie this thing up and route it so it's not going to vibrate or break the hose or anything like that. You can see that I put the cap on the end of the hose, and then I'm just going to tie wrap this stuff together so it doesn't shake loose or anything. Finally, you want to get your fuel valve reconnected, and again, when the bike is not being operated, you want to make sure that you shut the fuel valve off, and here would be the on position, and then this is reserve. So anyway, that's it for the fuel valve installation. The only thing left is putting the bolts back on up on top, reconnecting any breather tubes, and then putting your plastics back on. So that's pretty much it. Easy installation.